live yet. Oh, now we're live. Okay.
We're live.
Hi, everybody. I'm Caroline Leavitt, the co-founder, along with Jenna Blum of A Mighty Blaze. And I am totally thrilled and astonished to be here with the incomparably wonderful Joan Silber. Thank you so much for being here, Joan. And I have a rather lengthy bio to read and some stories to tell before I get in conversation, because Joan is that incredible. Okay, so as I was telling Joan before this, I first encountered Joan Silber with an early book of hers called Household Words. I was trying to find the original book and I can't. There was something about this book when I read it. And I told Joan, it was like I had never read a book before where the pages were so alive, where real life is being lived on every sentence. And when I kept telling people about the book, they would say, well, what's it about? And they obviously wanted something like, well, it's about a man who leaves his wife and da da da. And all I could think to say was, it's about everything. And that's why it's so wonderful. So I've read just about everything that Joan has written. I was lucky enough to have lunch with her once, quite a few years ago, I think. And we met up again at Books Are Magic when Christopher Castellani was reading. And every time I think Joan, like the words on her pages, she's just everything. So here's why. Joan is a writer who's won just about every prize there is. She studied with Grace Paley. Household Words won the Penn Hemingway Award. Her other works in fiction are In the City, In My Other Life, Lucky Us, Ideas of Heaven, which was a finalist for the National Book Award and the Story Prize. The Size of the World, finalist for the Los Angeles Times Prize in Fiction, and Fools, longlisted for the National Book Award and finalist for the PEN Faulkner Award. Her novel Improvement won the National Book Critics Circle Award for Fiction and the PEN Faulkner Award. She has received the PEN Malamud Award for Excellence in the Short Story. She's been recipient of an Academy Award in Literature from the American Academy of the Arts and Letters, a Guggenheim Fellowship, and grants from the National Endowment of the Arts and the New York Foundation of the Arts. Wait, there's more. Her short fiction has been chosen for the O. Henry Prize, Pushcart Prize, and Best American Short Stories. And she also teaches writing at Warren Wilson. Yet, the most interesting about Joan is you would think with all these prizes, she does not hobnob. She does not make sure that she's at every A-list party. I doubt if she knows just how many fans worship at her feet, because she's too busy writing and living in the world. She's also the nicest, kindest, most generous soul on the planet. It's clear that what matters to her is the work, that even without all these accolades, she would still be presenting some of America's best writing day after day. So today I'm going to be talking with Joan about her last book, Improvement, which is just gorgeous. And I was thrilled to have read an advance copy of her next book, The Secrets of Happiness, which is going to come in May. But as I talk about it, I think you all should definitely pre-order it because it's extraordinary. So I wanted to start by asking you, I read this wonderful article about you where you said your message is always, you can do better than that you write about the other side, not the innocent who is getting corrupted, but the corrupted who is becoming innocent. I can't tell you how much I love that. Can you talk about that, please?
Yes, thank you for your introduction.
That was You're welcome.
Everything. It was fabulous. I think, and people always say, oh, do you have one story that you tell over and over? And I feel like one of the stories I do tell over and over is of someone who has to learn exactly that lesson, who starts out much more corrupt and in some cases cynical or just darker in their notions. And they are kind of taught by circumstances to be other than that. The actual phrase of you can do better than that was from Fools, which is about, it starts out being about anarchists in the 20s when it's sort of past the heyday of anarchists. But I was thinking about Dorothy Day, who founded the Catholic Worker, who was an anarchist her whole life, actually. But because that's really the message. Like, you might think we're jerky idealists, but in fact, you can do better than that. So that's a message dear to my heart. And I feel that we're kind of invaded by, like, if I figure out what I want to watch on TV, it'll be mostly stuff about how bad people are. I mean, that's the
Yes,
premise of most, exciting
that's
plots.
right.
So just coming at it from another angle.
I love that other angle. I love that other angle. So let's talk about that in terms of, I want to skip around to my questions. Yes, I wanted to ask about the Buddhism that runs through Secrets of Happiness, which is this amazing novel about, well, again, it's about everything, but if you want to put it down to one line, I would say it's about a young man who discovers that his father has a whole other family, and there's a whole triangulation of people winding through it, and they all somehow have contact to each other. And there's a lot of Buddhist lessons in the book, such as that nothing lasts, we should live in the moment. I wanted to know if you could talk about your own relationship to Buddhism, and what does it give you as a writer?
Oh, people don't usually ask me that. I first became, I mean, I first became interested in Buddhism at a time in my life when, among other difficulties, I couldn't sell my writing. I had 13 years when I was certainly still writing, but nobody wanted to publish a book of mine. They were publishing stories. I was in perfectly good magazines, but nobody wanted to publish a book. So 13 years is a long time. And also, you don't know it's only going to be 13 years. It goes on and on and on. So I could see that whatever I was running on wasn't enough. I needed, just to sustain myself, something to kind of give me other sources of wisdom. So I began kind of reading about Buddhism and going to different Buddhist centers in New York and other places, and sort of finding out, whatever I could find out about it. I've never been a big meditator, I have to say, although in America, that's the part of Buddhism we take most to heart. I probably, I meditate occasionally, but that's not the crucial part
Right.
to me. And in Asia, it's probably less important to lay people. It's more a monastic practice, although not entirely. But the ideas of it, I always say the basic ideas are, don't worry, it won't last, nothing does, and get over yourself.
Right.
And those were really, I took those to heart. And although I often kind of cite Buddhism in what I'm writing now, I try to be a little more indirect about it. So it's someone on the side of the plot who's talking about it, or someone is exposed to the ideas, but I don't want it to be doctrinal. And I'm probably not.
It's not.
Oh, good.
It's
Good.
not. I just did research. That's the only reason I knew you were interested in Buddhism. In the book, it's just very sort of like a wave going through, rather than any sort of doctrine.
It's been very important to me as a person, and the whole idea of distance from what's going on, and also the whole idea of it's not just you. I think that Americans are really raised to think that if they're having any kind of difficulty, they can fix it, and there's something wrong with it if they can't fix it. And Buddhism really says, it's not just you. That's just the way things are. It doesn't mean they can't be repaired in some way. It's not against that, but it's not about resignation, but it's also about a kind of acceptance of, you're not the only one. So sometimes in the things that are said about me, like one of the nice blurbs says, oh, so people learn from this that they're not alone. Well, I kind of like solitude, so I'm not sure I would phrase it that way. But I do think it's not just you. That's a really important premise of it.
Right. You said something really interesting that I wanted to talk about too, which was, you just mentioned that for 13 years you were not publishing a book, you're just publishing stories. Yeah. And my response to that is, are you kidding me? So I want to know, why do you think that was? And what did you think about it then? And what do you think about it now? Like, what did you learn in that period where you weren't being published? Did you learn maybe that it's not the publication that matters, it's doing the work, or whatever?
I, of course, would have given different answers at different stages in this thing.
Right.
I would say the work changed during that time. I mean, also so I was getting exposed to Buddhism. I was exposing myself to it, and that fed in. I mean, the work, and then at the very end of that time, I developed this or I sort of fell into this form of linking stories in my own way. The
Okay.
idea of and that form has been very fruitful for me. The way I do it is more like novels now, but it's a continuing. I would say the past, I don't know, 5 books have been in that same form, and that, it helped me. So I think the work got better is one thing that
Okay.
happened. And I also think that, the world changes during that time. So what they're interested in hearing also changes. So some of that
Right.
is luck as well, that what I was doing was more interesting to people after a certain point.
What on earth did the rejection say, if you don't mind? I can't imagine you getting the rejection.
Well, that's very nice. Like all writers, in fact, when I moved 13 years ago, and one of the things that I moved was, file cabinets of stuff, like, okay, that goes out of the way. And they always, of course, like all of us, I got lots of rejections when I was really young too.
Right.
But mostly they would compliment my style, but they would feel that, they would understand the prose was, commendable in some way, but that it wasn't about, I think it wasn't about something they wanted to hear about.
Okay.
And they thought the work was too small, and it's probably less small now. It's probably expanded both by form and by what it's dealing with now.
Okay, that leads me to another question. That whole thing about like what's small and what's quiet. I read one review of yours where they called you a writer of quiet power. And again, I thought, what? There's so much going on your pages. I would never say it was quiet. We're not sitting here watching the grass grow. We're watching all these interactions between people who are growing and changing. The only thing I could think of is, unless they mean you don't have plane crashes. What do you think about that? I mean, do you think what do you think they're talking about?
Well, I'm not, I don't have a gift for plot, I don't think. And in fact, my using the story form as a way to write a novel was a way of dealing with that. I was able to get more kind of narrative suspense by pushing it hard in each story and then making the whole thing. That just sort of worked for me. I think also the standards of what people want to hear about really changed.
Right.
When I first started publishing in my long gone youth, I mean, people loved domestic realism. They loved hearing about families. And my book is probably more dramatic than most because somebody died in it. And then, ideas about, so people's standards of what's dramatic change over time.
I think that's important for every writer to know. And so I would like it if you could talk about how you put together improvement, because you have 6 narrators and at least 11 or 12 other people. And it's all this patchwork of things that come together and adhere in this absolutely perfect way. And so a lot of times you'll be reading about one character, then you don't hear from them for a while. And then towards the end of the novel, the name pops up and it's like this little electric shock of recognition that's so wonderful. And you go, oh, this is fabulous. So I wanted to know, when you're writing, do you know where the pieces are going, or do you just write in different pieces and then figure out how to put them together? How do you structure your novels?
A little of both, but mostly not knowing. And what I love about the form, I would say an improvement. I knew something was going to happen in the end. I knew that. I mean, once I had written the scene where someone dies in an accident, I knew that was going to have some sort of connection in the end, that the character was going to have to do something to try and make recompense for that, although I didn't know what exactly. I didn't know the rugs were going to feature in that. So the form allows me to have generated lots of material that I can then make use of, which always sort of happens in writing, but is even more so in this form. So I know the container for the thing, but I don't know what's going to go on in the middle. In improvement, the last piece that I wrote is from the viewpoint of the truck driver. So I wrote that after I'd finished the whole story, but then I thought, oh, there's a hole in this. Maybe I can do that. And I could.
Well, It worked beautifully. It worked absolutely beautifully. And the thing is that you did sort of the same thing in Secrets of Happiness, where we're just weaving in and out of these people's lives and discovering the connections as we go along. And it's such a superb book, and it's so unexpected. And I know you say, like, you've said that, plot isn't your thing, but I think it is, just not the way we're used to thinking about plot, because everything has a causality in that book, and it's just absolutely sublime. So I want to know, do you feel that as you're moving from one book to another, that one book is building on top of another book, or do you approach new books as a totally new thing? Do you feel confident when you start writing, or what is that like for you?
It's always a new thing, and it's always a new dilemma. And when I'm beginning a book, I always say I'm in the stupid stages. Because
I love that. I'm going to take that.
Right, because the early parts are dopey. The characters are not, developed yet. They do they do more ordinary things, or they're less specific. They're more generalized. So, but I don't usually have an idea until I'm done with a book. I'm not very good at multitasking, so I have to be
Right.
really done with something. Usually, I have begun something a little bit, and then I have to go back and do revisions or whatever on the last book. But I'm pretty done before and then I make a lot of false starts. I mean, I think I'm going to write about this, and I think I'm going to write about that, and there's some big idea that I've been, that has been in my notebooks for a while that I want to do about, and connections I can make in it. But I would say I'm a little more confident each time, because I have a sense that people like me now. I mean,
Right.
But and I'm not. This is going to be a really weird thing to say. I'm not afraid of people disliking me, because they can. And it's sort of like I've already gotten a lot of
Right. That's right.
So if the next book, didn't do well, it wouldn't devastate me. I want it to do well. I don't mean to, and I don't think they're so different. I think if you liked the last one, you probably like the next one. But you never know.
You never know. I wanted to thank you for saying all that, because I know that a lot of writers don't talk about how hard it is, and their false starts and their insecurities and stuff. So hearing that, I mean, I feel like emblazoning it on a t-shirt that Joan Silber says, okay, we have an audience question for you. What do you want readers to take from your books?
Oh, well, I do want them to take a sense of, I'm probably doomed to do this for the rest of my life. I always quote my mother's saying, "You're not the only pebble on the beach," which was just a way that parents in that generation spoke, which meant don't be so selfish, because if you're a little kid, you are selfish. But I want the sense of there being lots of people involved in similar experiences to be part of the feeling that you would get from the fiction.
That's great. I wanted to ask you too about, this is a great story. This was the year when all 5 National Book Award nominees, including you, were women.
Yeah.
And I remember it was written up, and there was a lot of nastiness, particularly from male critics, because A, they were all women, and B, none of you on that list had like huge blockbusters. You had modest but decent sales, but not blockbuster sales, and there was a lot of sniping over it. And the most wonderful thing about it is that I forgot to write down who won that year, but whoever
Lily
Tuck won, and she invited all of you over to her house, and you all celebrated together. And I thought, that is something that is so female, and I love it so much. Can you talk about that time, how you felt being nominated with this woman, and how you felt knowing there was such a solidarity and support among women writers?
We were great. And in fact, we all, one of us has left for California, Sarah from Bynum, but the others are still and Sarah and I still keep in touch somewhat. And the others are still in New York. We always go to each other's readings. We always, when the pandemic started, Lily wrote everybody to make sure we were okay. There's lots of stuff like that. All of us are still writing quite actively. Kate Walbert just had a book. Sarah just had a book. Lily had a book in the past year. So everybody's still, in there working. No, and it was a great thing. All of us really were very supportive of each other. And Lily had all of us on with her on the Charlie Rose show, which was
that's so wonderful.
Those days. So we were very supportive of each other. We really were.
That is totally amazing. I mean, the only other thing that I've seen of that is I and 4 other writers were doing some library association talk in front of 100 librarians. And we were all very nervous. And the last person, and we were all like sort of unknown at the time. And the last person to speak was Adriana Trigiani. So we all did our little speak. And then Adriana came up and she had 5 books with her, which was our books. And she talked a little bit about each book. And she had read each book. And she said, everyone, if you want to be my friend, you better buy these books. And I remember thinking, I am going to be like that woman. I am going to pass it along. That is just a wonderful thing to do in the writing community because it's hard. It's hard
and
otherwise.
You have been a fabulous supporter of other writers.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, another question. Oh, this is great. Would it be possible for you, Joan, to read aloud the first paragraph in your new book?
Yes. Wait,
I would love to hear that.
It's the advantage of being in your own home. You can.
I know.
It's beautiful cover. See, I have a really nice.
I have. So they sent me the cover, and it's just, this is the most gorgeous book. Everyone, really, you're going to want to pre-order this.
Okay, I'll read the first little bit here. It's a boy talking to a man. My father was on the road a lot when I was growing up. Off to parts of Asia to oversee the cheap manufacture of ladies' garments. You couldn't stay still, he said, in today's business world. Ever ask him about the local babe? One of my friends wanted to know. You should go with him next time, Ethan. He was just being a smartass. We were 15-year-old boys at the time, obnoxious whenever we could be. My father complained about too much time away from home. He missed us, he missed New York, and always came back with great presents. My mother and my sister got silk scarves and pearl necklaces. As a first grader, I had a Kung Fu t-shirt from Hong Kong, and as a teen, I had crazy pop tapes from Thailand. Mike, my friend, tried to get me to gamble away my tapes to him in a card game.
That is so wonderful. I just wrote down on a piece of paper Kung Fu t-shirt, which is an example of, you have all these little details in, and by themselves, they don't, they're just like ordinary things, but they take on this huge power on the pages. Thank you for doing the reading. My last 2 questions have to do with teaching and what it means for a writer to be teaching. So first of all, what was it like to study with Grace Paley, and what do you think the biggest lesson she gave you was about writing?
Oh, it was wonderful to study with Grace. She was new to teaching at the time, and I would say the teaching of fiction was a little more freeform than it is now, but she was Grace, so she had this fabulous personality. She talked a lot about voice, so I tried to take some of that. And she once said that she thought that a story could be organized like a poem, which was her own idea of plot, I think, related to image and related to a kind of emotional association. And that was very helpful.
Can you talk more about that? I'm not sure I understand how a story is like a poem. You mean structured like it, or just the emotional feelings that move through it?
Who knows what she meant, but I thought, I mean, in all honesty, and it was many years ago, but I thought it meant that it didn't, because plot was taught in a very schematic way in those days, and her stories were never like that.
Right.
And emotionally, it could be, I think I thought of it as a kind of emotional association for a story, that could be its structure as opposed to this happened, then that happened.
That makes sense. I actually spoke to Grace Paley on the phone once, And the thing about her was that the first thing she, as I was asking her this very professional question, she interrupted me and said, "Wait, I have to ask you, did you eat lunch? What did you have for lunch yet?" I mean, she was like really,
Yeah.
really motherly and real, and it
Yeah,
was just
that's great.
lovely. Oh, here's another question for you. Joan, do you read widely as you draft a new book, or do you abstain?
Oh, I do read. I don't know how widely I read, but I do read a lot as I'm writing because I'm always writing. I mean, I couldn't read otherwise. And I mostly read fiction, but sometimes nonfiction as well that's related to the settings that I'm talking about. Yeah.
Okay. And I want to return to teaching again. You teach too. I wanted to know, like, how does teaching help you personally in your writing? I mean, what do you get out from it, and why is it important to you?
Oh, I think I learned a huge amount teaching. When I first started teaching, many decades ago, I really only wrote novels. I hadn't written stories yet, although as a teacher, you're really working with students' stories most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it really helped me learn the form in a way that I probably hadn't before. And also, students are always teaching you new things. I mean, they're exposing you to writers they like. They're forcing you to articulate things that you kind of half know. I've had wonderful students. I taught both undergrad and grad at Sarah Lawrence, and now at Warren Wilson, which is a low residency program
Right.
for grad students. No, I love that. I like the contact with other human beings even more than the crafts sides of it.
Yeah, I think that's important. Is there any question that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you?
Oh, I'm trying to think of anything else that I want to say. Um, I think that it's a time when we're all sort of concerned about the morality of fiction in some ways, like
Right.
um, uh, without even directly talking about politics. I mean, I assume that fiction reminds us that other people have interior lives, um, and that's not the whole story. That's not everything, but it's a crucial part. And I think it's why we think that people who don't read are shallow. So I guess I want to endorse that idea. It's not a question; it's a statement on my part. The effort in that direction.
We have another question. Somebody wants to know, what are we both reading right now? What's on our nightstand? I just finished Joan's book, Secret of Happiness, and as I said, it's so great that everything pales beside it. Before that, I read an arc of Gina Frangella's new memoir, which is called Blow Your House Down, which is extraordinary. It's raw, it's gritty, it's dangerous. And that's it. Joan, what's on your nightstand?
What's on my nightstand is actually a nonfiction book called Imperial Twilight. That's about the Opium Wars,
Oh,
England versus China, with India involved, and that's fabulous. It's actually the writer Stephen Platt. It's like a really great, narrative history writer. And then I had read in advance proofs a book by Caroline Farrell called Dear Miss Metropolitan. That's amazing. It's
I'm
about,
really, I'm gonna write that down.
yeah, yeah. It's a very fictional treatment of the young girls who were kidnapped for like more than a decade and kept in this house. It uses
Oh,
that as the premise for this fabulous,
oh
wonderful.
wait, tell me the author again.
Her name is Caroline Farrell, Ferrell.
Okay.
She's a Sir Lawrence colleague, and she was also Grace's student. And I
Oh, great.
wrote that.
I'm gonna look that up. And I was gonna say I had no more questions, but I just thought of two more, which is what keeps you up at night, and what sustains you?
Oh, um, what keeps me up at night now is probably worrying about the country.
Right.
Something that is keeping everybody up awake. And if this happens, what about that happen? What
Right.
will we do then? What sustains me? Well, I am sustained by my belief system to some extent, but I also am sustained by my friends.
Right.
And that's been true my whole life. Um, I'm a person at this point without any immediate family. My parents both died very young. I don't have any siblings. So my friends are really everything to me, and they're wonderful. They have sustained me through everything.
And I keep saying the final question, but I thought of another one. A lot of my writer friends and I have been talking about the whole idea of, when the pandemic first started, we thought, how dare we write? We can't, this is happening now. We have to observe. We can't know what we feel about this until it's over. And there's another group of writers who are saying, no, right now is when we should be writing about the pandemic. What's your feeling about that? Does that enter your thoughts about, if you set a novel in the present day, will you talk about the pandemic, or will you avoid it, or will you have it like in a Jane Austen novel, like the soldiers at the door that you sort of see out of the corner of your eye?
I probably have something like that. The thing I'm working on now begins with a father talking about his daughter not being able to go to her graduation, but then we get his whole life as the story. Yeah. I don't want to read too much about the pandemic. I think
right. I don't either.
How people never leave home and what they're doing, and that I think is a little tedious.
Right. And also, I'm thrilled to know you're working on another novel. I can't wait. Are there any other questions from the audience? I'll give it like a second. No? Okay, then I want to thank all of you for showing up. This will be on our YouTube station, so you can watch it again. It's also going to be on our Facebook A Mighty Blaze page. And I want to encourage all of you again, we're connected to bookshop.org, which helps all the independent bookstores. Pre-order Joan's book. It's absolutely, I guarantee, like, you're going to, it's everything. I know I'm gushing and speaking like an idiot, but that's the way the book affected me. And Joan, thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you.